So the headline view of Malaysia is that it's the 1MDB saga, right? But as someone who actually lives here, I can say that the top-down view of Malaysia doesn't really represent how the economy functions, right? Our politics at the top is quite messy, but our institutions are actually very robust relative to our neighbors. Right? I've actually had the pleasure of reading our central bank governor announcements, as well as understanding the intricacies of how our bosses try and develop the stock markets, right, and derivative markets, as well as also the cultivation of CBDC and inter-region, inter-country, right, payment networks. So one was just linked with Singapore. Right now, we can use QR codes with Singapore from our Malaysian phones. So there's a lot of emerging market development. Let's just put it that way, right?
Very cool. And there is obviously an ETF that tracks the Malaysian market, EWM, which sounds like might not be a terrible idea if you want access to growth in the region, especially in Southeast Asia, which is growing.
Correct. I just recently wrote an article about Malaysia macro on my blog. So if you want to know more, just have a look at it.
Geopolitically, where is Malaysia in the whole China versus US thing? It seems like a lot of countries in the region have kind of broken down along that fault line.
Malaysia is actually quite, I would say, split down the middle, quite neutral, in the sense that Malaysia does have a 20% Chinese population, right? And I would, as a local Chinese, I think most of the Chinese population tend to side with the China side. Basically, and the Malays, they are 60% of the population, they have a stranglehold on the voting base, right? And they actually call the shots over the Chinese. If you read our political history, it's there. So in terms of the Malay administration, right, they're actually truly neutral. They truly do not pick sides in the sense that they need to be worried about the Chinese voter base, right? They need their support. But at the same time, they're very much not wanting to lean completely to China and become reliant on it, right? So the new Anwar administration, Anwar, if you know him from 20 years ago, he actually has a history of being seen as a cosmopolitan, as well as being seen as a progressive. So his views are very, let's just say, democratized, right? And that's his policy. But at the same time, he needs to be realistic about his voter base, right? Which is, let's say, 50% Chinese, which is more of the progressive side of things. On the economic side, there are actually two major things that need to be mentioned. One is that because of the 20% Chinese population, right, a lot of them actually live in a small northern island called Penang. And Penang happens to be control 7% of global TAM for trailing edge semiconductor testing equipment. So Penang really does have a lot of economic heft in terms of even policy, right? Secondly, there is the decoupling situation of the global economy, which is seeing a lot of Western businesses move their manufacturing bases out of China to Southeast Asia, which is why I call Southeast Asia the next China of the world, right? The next factory of the world. Because we are in this sweet spot where there's relative political stability, as well as relatively low labor pool costs, right? China's not so cheap anymore.